Tashdile and welcome to Tibet This Week. This is Sakina Bhatt with another edition of Weekly News on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. Let's look at the headlines. His Holiness the Dalai Lama to confer 2-day Avalokiteshvara initiation on 29th to 30th May 2020. CTA launches website to update on its initiative in curbing COVID-19. CTA President congratulates Dr Tsai Ing-wen, says Taiwan deserves full-fledged affiliation with World Health Organization. MP David Sweet calls on Canada to do more than just hope for dialogue. UN experts ask Chinese app TikTok to comply with international human rights standards. CTA's Information Secretary says May 23rd should be the day China look back and see what it promised to the Tibetans. His Holiness the Dalai Lama will confer Avalokiteshvara empowerment on 29th and 30th of May 2020 from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time. The global audience can tune into live webcast of the teachings in various languages on the official websites and Facebook pages of the Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. On Thursday last week, CTA launched its website that delivers comprehensive information and data on measures taken by CTA in curbing the COVID-19 situation in the Tibetan community. The COVID-19 Emergency Relief Committee website is accessible both in English and Tibetan. At the routine briefing of the CTA Huan COVID-19 Emergency Relief Committee on Tuesday this week, Si Kyong suggested a uniform process of conducting swab tests across all the quarantine facilities to ensure detection at the most evident stage of COVID-19 symptoms. CTA's Department of Health modified the process of mass sanitization on zone-wise color code. Those settlements which fall in red zones or containment zones should disinfect and sanitize the whole area. And settlements in the orange zones are to sanitize the offices and health offices and junction area, while the green zones may sanitize as per the requirement. CTA's Department of Home disbursed 1 crore rupees to 2,000 applicants from across India, Nepal and Bhutan for CTA Emergency Relief Fund. Those applicants will be further reviewed by nodal officers of the Department of Home to ensure that the applicants fulfill the basic criteria to avail of this emergency support.
And so far we have received 2,000 applications in total, and out of that we have disbursed for the 1,740 people all over India, Nepal and Bhutan. And from the total number of 2,000, 123 has been rejected and 137 has been submitted to the Department of Education, because those were the students and college-going students. So out of 2,000, we have disbursed amount to the 1,740 people.
Si Kyong has directed the Department of Home to allocate COVID-19 emergency support funds to those Tibetans facing distress and are presently stranded due to the nationwide lockdown because of the COVID-19 pandemic. CTA's Health Department launched a COVID-19 online training initiative on 18th May for the benefit of medical officers, nurses and community health workers of Department of Health's health facilities.
Considering the sudden surge of cases of COVID-19 in the world, particularly in India, the Department of Health in April 2020 has started working on capacity building program for its healthcare workers as part of its preparedness plan. The medical team of the Department of Health has designed and developed the training module for its online training program. The overall goal of this training is to enhance the knowledge of the healthcare workers on COVID-19 in order to prevent transmission and the morbidity in our settlements due to COVID-19. And number two is to basically to update knowledge on the recent development in the antiviral drugs and the vaccine and the testing to our medical officers. And the third objective behind this training is to prevent or to protect our health workers from acquiring COVID-19. The training will cover topics such as epidemiology, global spread of COVID-19, clinical features, diagnosis, clinical management, usage of PPE, and hospital infection control.
President Dr. Lobsang Singye congratulated Taiwanese President Dr. Tsai Ing-wen on the commencement of a second term and said Taiwan deserves full-fledged affiliation with World Health Organization. In his congratulatory letter, Si Kyong mentioned, Tibetans share the Taiwanese spirit for freedom and resilience against all odds. With you at the helm, we hope the friendship between Tibetans and the people of Taiwan, a vast majority of whom admire and revere His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, will be further strengthened. MP David Sweet raised Tibet issue on Monday this week at the House of Commons of Canada and called on Canada to do more than just hope for dialogue. MP David Sweet addressed the appalling human rights violations in China by Xi Jinping-led Chinese Communist Party at the House of Commons during a session on the Special Committee on Canada-China Relations.
Maybe the longest persecution of an ethnic and religious minority by the CCP, are Tibetans. I've spoken about this in this chamber and at the Subcommittee on International Human Rights for as long as I've been elected. Again, Tibetans have a long, proud history, one that the CCP regime doesn't recognize and have done their best to crush. They are an impediment to the regime's goals. As a result, the CCP brutally cracks down on any behavior that they believe promotes Tibetan culture. So brutal are their measures that Tibetans are self-immolating in protest of the regime. Speaker, it's reported that since 2009, 128 men and 28 women have set themselves on fire to protest this regime. What have we become that we don't shout from the rooftops and take sanctioning measures against the perpetrators of these heinous human rights violations that are so abhorrent, people will set themselves on fire?
In a 10-page letter dated 15 May 2020 addressed to Mr. Trang Yiming, founder and owner of Chinese video sharing app TikTok, the UN human rights experts have asked TikTok to adhere with international human rights standards while undertaking the task of content moderation. The Chinese video sharing platform banned a US teen from posting videos criticizing China's treatment of Uyghur Muslims. After the global outcry, TikTok was forced to apologize and reinstate the US teen's videos and account. A leaked internal document of TikTok revealed how TikTok ordered its moderators to censor videos that mention Tiananmen Square, Tibet issue, or the banned religious group Falun Gong. CTA's Information Secretary Tsawang Gyalpo Arya said that it could help in finding a common ground if Chinese leadership looked back and see what it promised to the Tibetans and what it delivered. Following is a short interview marking 69th anniversary of the 17-point agreement.
23rd May 2020 marks the 69th anniversary of the day when the 17-point agreement was signed between Tibet and China. Today we'll discuss about the importance of the 17-point agreement on political and historical ground, as well as its relevance to today's politics, especially with China's relation with Hong Kong and Taiwan. We have with us our Information Secretary, Mr. Tsawang Gyalpo Arya, to talk about today's 17-point agreement's importance and its significance. Many people believe that the 17-point agreement was the reason why Tibet lost its claim to independence. So what is your take on it?
So this 17-point agreement, which was signed in 1951 and May 23, is a very important historical document. So many people feel that with this, Tibet has lost its independence. Even the Chinese Communist Party, they claim that with these documents, they say that they have permission to enter and liberate Tibet. But in fact, what this document shows is that this document is forced upon to the Tibetans. But then, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan governments, studying the situation, accepted it and tried to accommodate the Chinese, their proposals. But then things didn't go well, though the Chinese, they themselves violated the agreements. And then this 10th March uprising came, and then His Holiness the Dalai Lama repudiated these agreements. By repudiating this agreement, what it shows is from the International Code of Law, it says Tibet became an occupied country because there was no agreement signed between Tibet and China. What was signed is forced upon by the Chinese, but at the same time, China has violated the agreements. So this has become a very important historical document to show that before 1951, Tibet was an independent country.
Right. So, like you said, it was an agreement that was signed under force, and it was signed under duress. So, but it was signed under duress by the Chinese Communist Party, but there are many points that Chinese Communist Party themselves violated. What are the important points that they violated?
So, there are 17 points in the agreement itself, and China has implemented only those points which are beneficial to them. Those points which benefits the Tibetan community or the Tibet, they didn't implement it. Suppose, like there are point number 3, point number 4, point number 7, point number 11. Point number 3 says that Tibet will have a full autonomy. So Tibet will be ruled by the Tibetans. But then this did not happen. And then the second point, the fourth point, it says that the His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan government structure itself, it will remain same. There will be no change in the power of His Holiness Dalai Lama and the Tibetan cabinets and the ministers. But then this all changed. It didn't remain like that. And the seventh point, it says that Tibetan religion and culture will be preserved. But then when the China came, more than 6,000 monasteries were destroyed. Monks and nuns, they were disrobed. So this did not happen. The 11th point, they say that any reform that will take place in Tibet will be done with the will and the understanding or the approval of the Tibetan people. But did that happen? It did not happen. In all these points, it shows that whatever that they have promised to the Tibetans, they did not keep it. So that's why this 17-point agreement, which was forced upon by the Chinese, it's become a null and void. And from International Court of Law, it is invalid. And by saying it is invalid, it shows that Tibet before 1951 was an independent country.
Right. So these days, when people talk about 17-point agreement, some people think that it only has relevance and significance on a historical point of view. But you have also mentioned that this is not just a historical document, it has relevance to today's politics also. Nowadays, there are a lot of problems with Chinese government, with Taiwan, and with Hong Kong. How does the 17-point agreement has relevance to Hong Kong and Taiwan?
Yeah, now these days the Tibet experience has shown to the world that what type of governments the Communist government of China is like. Because now with the Hong Kong, the British and the China, they have agreed in 1984 to give a certain high degree of autonomy to the Hong Kong, saying that's a one country, two systems. And with the Taiwan also, the China says that under this one country, two system, Taiwan will have a democratic government and all this high degree autonomy. But Taiwanese people, as well as the Hong Kong people, they say that what happened to Tibet? Tibet was also promised this kind of a system through these 17-point agreements that was signed in 1951, in which they have agreed a high degree of autonomy, preservation of the Tibetan culture and language, and not interfering in the religious things and the power of His Holiness Dalai Lama. What has happened? So they say that any promise that they will make to the Hong Kong and to the Taiwan, at first they need to implement what has been promised to the Tibetans. And when this promise which has been made to the Tibet is not implemented, they cannot believe what the China says. Because if they take what the China says, Hong Kong and the Taiwan may also become like what is happening in Tibet, what has happened in Tibet.
So these are all false promises that Chinese government keeps on making?
Yes, definitely. So these are all false promises that Chinese makes. First they make a promises, once they gain the things, then they violate their promises themselves. So this is what the Taiwan people and the Hong Kong people, they are very afraid of.
Right. Thank you, Kumo, for taking time for us.
Thank you.
So much for today. See you next time and have a great weekend.